Fries podcast, the podcast about linguistic discrimination.
I'm Carrie Gillen.
And I'm Megan Figueroa. And we have something a little different for you today.
Yeah, this is kind of a bonus episode in that it's an extra episode.
Yes. Speaking of bonuses, real quick plug for Patreon.
Yes.
Yes, we have a Patreon, and if you join, there are stickers and a mug, and geez, how many bonus episodes at this point?
49? Something like that.
That's wild. Okay, yeah. So many bonus episodes. Our last one was about Wordle.
Oh yeah, Wordle, which just got bought by New York Times. Oh, and by the way, I was wrong. He's Welsh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can access all of those at www.patreon.com/vocalfriespod. Yeah, so today's episode is kind of like an extra episode where Anna Marie Trester talks with a reader of her newest book. So the reader is Sophie Henry, and the newest book is Employing Linguistics, Thinking and Talking About Careers for Linguists.
Yeah, and Anna Marie was a guest of ours. Episode called Cheaper Than Therapy.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So we talked about an earlier book. So she's done 2 books now on this sort of area. So if you're interested in learning more about what linguists can do outside of academia,
right,
those are the places that you can look.
Yeah. You might be inspired right now because academia is a cesspool. Anyway.
All right. Well, Sophie, thanks for taking the time to do this. I'm excited you're kind of the first reader that I've talked to.
Well, I'm honored to be here, so I'm super excited also.
Well, I appreciate you, and you have some questions for me. I have some questions for you, so let's just start off.
Sounds good. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, coming off of your first book, Bringing Linguistics to Work, what led you to decide to write a second book, and what is different about this one compared to that first book?
Yeah, I guess, so I Bringing Linguistics to Work came out in 2017, and pretty soon after it came out, I realized, this is actually 2 books. It's a book containing stories, and it's a book containing, more like activities, or, sort of a how-to. And I realized it felt like I needed to make the 2 books.
Right.
So I started working. I said, I'll start working on both, and I'll see which one gets me to a publisher sooner. I wanted to publish like with a publisher for this. I wanted that experience because I self-published the other one, and I just wanted the experience of working with a publisher. I didn't know what it would be like. So the publishers were interested in this one first.
Okay, great.
So the idea was way more stories. So that's one way that it's different from Bringing Linguistics to Work. There's like 40 stories in this one, whereas there were like 4 in Bringing Linguistics to Work. Working with the editors and the review process that they put me through, they showed me other ways to expand. So it's a bigger expanse geographically. I was also writing this book during the time of like the massive the protests and the cultural awakening happening in this country. So in the United States here. So I really wanted to have more people of color in the book. And I made a point to talk about that. And also I realized it sort of happened that I was centering women, and then kind of thought about that and doubled down on that. And I decided that was kind of part of this.
Yeah, kind of a good bias to have.
And just like it may have happened without my deliberately trying to do it, but I realized there was a reason why I was doing it, and it was something I cared about.
Yeah, that's kind of like what you talk about in your book, because you don't always know where you're going when you're on the certain path, but then it ends up working out in your favor. So that's great.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, yeah. Okay. So that leads to my question. I really wanted this theme of normalizing ambiguity or uncertainty, and I wanted to know how that landed with you as a reader.
Honestly, that is my favorite message in the whole entire book, because going into like my master's program at Georgetown, I felt like I was in just a kind of the middle of nowhere. Like I was going to do this thing, but I didn't know exactly where it was going to lead me or how it connected to where I had been before. And when you go into situations like this, you kind of feel like everybody else has everything
Yeah.
figured out.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like you can talk about like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. The first day of class, you feel like you have to tell everybody exactly what your interests are, and that if you don't have it figured out, that like you're kind of lesser than.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate that you're taking the time to like cement the actual idea of normalizing uncertainty, because of course there's conversations about it, but there's those just happen in passing. This is something like you can go back to and remind yourself like, okay, it's okay to not know where you're going, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to end up somewhere great.
Yeah. In fact, I think it's more likely that you'll end up somewhere great if you can let yourself be in that kind of uncertainty. That's where you find the like really interesting connections, and
and it helps you stay open to other things that if you were just on like a direct path that you would never take into account.
I hope so. And I mean, I came to feel really strongly that a lot of this feeling like uncertainty wasn't okay was discursively reinforced.
Yeah.
And specifically through the stories, the kinds of stories that we hear. So that was another, deliberate, something that I was deliberately from the outset doing with this book. I wanted to structure the stories differently. I wanted different kinds of stories. I wanted a more broad remit of stories. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It's your turn to ask a question.
Yeah. This actually connects to something I really wanted to ask you, because I've thought about how like I've opened up like just generally with classmates and friends about like how it feels to not know what you're doing. But again, that's like you say it and it's gone. How does it feel to like take that vulnerability from yourself and to like write about how you have felt like uncertain and know that that's going to be out there for everybody?
You mean now that the book is out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are moments where you feel really like vulnerable. I knew it was coming because with bringing linguistics to work, it surprised me. I didn't know that it was going to happen. My aunt took me out to lunch back then and told me my uncle had written a book and he self-published, and the books all sat in his garage.
Oh no.
And like she told me this and she was like, don't let that happen to you. So like I had that to kind of remind me, like, the whole reason you wrote the book was to put it out there. So don't have all these ideas that just sit in your garage, like get them.
Let them go out, yeah.
But yeah, over the course of writing the book, and you get peer reviews too, where some of the reviewers commented on my my writing style, and that was one of the things that's interesting. This is an academic book, and I'm writing for an academic audience, but I did want to have a very real, for me, more real to me writing style. My writing style is sort of part of I want to set a tone for exploration, and my writing style, it's quite conversational, and this became a conversation with my editors, and I ended up doing sort of a little partway through the book, based on some of the comments I was getting from reviewers. I did like a little focus group with readers, and the feedback that I got, not everybody could point to the writing style, but I got a lot of feedback that it was different.
Yeah.
The style was different, but that ultimately it made them feel invited in. It made them feel
like having a conversation with a friend, kind of.
Yeah. And so I heard that a lot, and I thought, okay, that feels vulnerable, but that's what I'm wanting. And I'm trying to ask my readers to be vulnerable, so I have to be vulnerable in the same way.
Exactly. And I think that really comes through. So that's something I appreciate. And it's interesting too, like with your writing, like going on the like conversational kind of aspect of it, because you're incorporating so many stories. That's not something I feel like that normally happens in a book. So I feel like it all kind of meshes well together.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of, this was one of the questions I wanted to ask you particularly, because you're in the pro seminar that I write about in chapter 2.
Yes.
So I wanted to know, like, did that feel, I kind of wanted it to feel like, so if somebody's reading this book and they're currently a student, I kind of wanted them to have the sense of like, oh, like everyone who's around me right now is going to go do interesting things. And there's sort of a hidden message there of like, connect with your classmates, like
right.
make the time now to get to know them, so that when you're, anyways, I wondered, having reading this book when you're actually in that class, did you have any of those moments? Like, is it making you kind of look at your classmates differently? Or
yeah, definitely. I mean, because I feel like in the realm of the class, like your goal is, okay, I'm going to go out and have all these conversations with people who have already made it. But if you don't make those connections with your classmates, you're not going to be with the people that made it when you're out there by yourself. So it's good to build that community. And I think I've realized how to recognize the strengths in my classmates more that I want to learn from and that I admire. And
so cool.
Just like ask them more about the internships that they're doing and like how they got to those places, because they're literally where I am now. So they're kind of almost a better resource in some ways than the people that have been there, done that. Yeah.
I love it. Does the fact that it's 10 years on, does that, so I always felt like I'm in a position of having a lot of perspective on job, because I talk to people over the course of decades, right? Like that's one of the benefits of being a little bit older.
Yeah.
I hoped that it would give some sort of, insight to like, this is what it'll be like down the road, to like help. It's another way that I was trying to kind of reinforce it's okay to have uncertainty now, because even, 10 years down the line, people are still figuring things out, and it works out and you make it work. And I don't know.
That's like a conversation I've had with a couple of like mentors in my life, is that like I'll sit down and be like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And they're like, well, don't worry, I don't know what I'm doing either. So it's something that you just go along and embrace as you go. But I think my favorite thing from the stories in the book from everybody, like over the course of 10 years, is all the possibilities that I wouldn't just sit here and like, it wouldn't dawn on me that I could do that without seeing an example of somebody doing it before me. So that's something I really appreciate. And especially Samantha's story, and one of the first chapters of your book, that like, I don't have to wait to start doing something when I've graduated, that I can start on those journeys now.
That's so cool. I think she'll love to hear that. I met her when I was doing a workshop in Madison, University of Wisconsin. And she was just about to start her business. And I was like, I want to talk to you. Like, wow, that, wow, that state change is happening.
Yeah, because it's a weird place to navigate, because like, you can do it, but you've also never done it before. So
and then you realize you're actually doing it, and then you're like, wow, I guess I'm doing it. Like, I love that.
And keep swimming and it'll all work out.
Yeah, that was so fun. Yeah, I really wanted the first chapter to feature, especially I wanted somebody who was just right there. So like Samantha was so generous, and it was just a great time to meet her. And then I had Charlotte Lindy.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Yes.
I mean, she's one of my heroes. I say that in the book. It was kind of vulnerable for me to interview her too, because she's a larger than life kind of, and I kind of had to, she's the expert on life stories, but I was kind of fighting with her a little bit. Not fighting, but I really wanted to tell a story that was not that canonical. You hear so often, like when people in our world, in academia, they center the moment of leaving academia. Like, why did you leave academia? Like, that's the first question. So like, we've already got this frame of like, academia is where we're supposed to be. I didn't want that. And Charlotte is retired, and I wanted to start the narrative now. Like, what are you doing now? And she was so like, why am I talking about like what I'm doing now? Like, I want to talk about what I did. I said, we will, like, it'll come.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that about Charlotte. Like she'll get in there and
Let
really
you know how she feels.
make you fight for your ideas. I mean, I think
you feel confidence in your own thoughts.
yeah, it's a sign of respect, I think. And then Anne, it just was that listening to her. She was that was the last conference I went to before COVID came down. Mm-hmm. The LSA in 2020, January 2020.
Yeah.
And she just like made this call to our field, like we got to do better.
Right.
And I think, because of everything that happened and because of just that moment, just like I liked it as a storyteller because it was a moment, but it was also like the kind of moment that we need to be thinking about as a field.
Yeah.
So, and then it also really worked out well that I had someone in the, in the beginning, in the middle, and
yes, definitely.
Charlotte's not at the end, but yeah, she's starting a new chapter.
Yeah, which is comforting too to see like there's a sense of comfort in permanency, but also in change, that you don't have to stay in one thing after you've been there for a while. It's okay to keep growing and embracing that uncertainty.
And retirement, like I'm looking forward to my retirement. I talked to like in bringing linguistics to work too, Marco Crand. He's living his best life. Like
yes.
I'm celebrating retirement because that might be, well, it is, I hope, if I'm lucky.
You will be. You got to manifest it. Make that look out there for yourself.
On a retirement like these guys.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I can't remember if it's your turn or my turn.
I think it's my turn because well, if it's not, I have a question I want to ask you anyway.
Yeah, go.
So you've obviously, as you said, done like hundreds of interviews, and each one of them is different. I mean, because you're with a different person every time, but is there a certain question you take to each interview that you like look for an answer for, or is it more of like an idea?
I really tried to, I think with bringing linguistics to work, I was being a little bit more by the book, or I had an interview rubric and I sent people questions ahead of time. And with this book, the first person I talked to, it just, the story didn't end up making it into the book for various reasons, but, I sat in that room and I really was talking to her. She just had a baby and brand new baby. So her whole life was changing.
Yeah.
And he was in the room with us, and, I just said, I really want to try with this book. I just really want to try to let things emerge and let's just see. And we had great conversation. The reason it didn't end up in the book was there were other factors, but I really tried to let each conversation sort of tell me how I wanted to be told. And there was an accident even with Greg in chapter 3, I don't know if you've gotten there yet, but I was asking, I put it out there that I'd love to come to people's offices if I could. Mm-hmm. And somehow Greg heard that I wanted to talk to his colleagues, not him.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to talk to his colleagues about but then I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's so fun. So I got to talk, I went to his place of work and talked to his colleagues about what it's like to work with him.
Oh, yes.
That was a happy accident because she was so enthusiastic. She had immediate answers about what was inspiring to her to know, to learn from him, to know from him, to work alongside him.
Definitely. Well, that's something that you've talked about before of especially in self-reflection, that sometimes it's easier to ask other people what strengths they see in you rather than you analyzing yourself, which, I mean, you need a mirror sometimes to reflect back on you, the things you can't see.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I went back and read the proposal recently, which is always interesting because it's different.
Yeah.
I had said that I really wanted an employer,
mm-hmm.
and I guess I must have tried.
Yeah.
That might have been I can't remember that was 2018 now, 4 years ago, when I was sending out these meeting requests. So I must have said something about like, I'd love to talk to your, I don't know. I probably would have said like colleagues and bosses. And there were one or two bosses along the way too. But I don't know. I guess the colleague was, she shone, the theme of the book, these bright spots. I really let my own, like the stories that really remembered themselves to me the strongest, right, also ended up becoming, you have to choose. You can't include everything. And I have time. I have lots of stories that may end up finding other
places.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. I mean, and that's like a metaphor for the book itself, because it's all about emerging like as you're going. So
and awesome. Stuff might change. Yeah. Huh. Well, I guess that's where I wanted to end, or it's a good time to maybe start wrapping up, and here's a good way to do it.
It'll leave a little mystery for everybody.
Yeah. But I mean, so there's this metaphor in the book. I really hope and want it to make sense of activities like networking and informational interviewing, and which can feel, I don't know, I had the sense that can feel kind of disorganized or disconnected. I wanted to give an organizing concept that made the reader see why it is that you get that advice. You're like, I don't know what to do. And you're like, go talk to that person. Like, it seems
disconnected,
fragmented.
Yeah.
Is it helpful in kind of showing a little bit of the connections are going to be different for everybody. And you got to participate in a workshop just earlier this week where we tried to play with the idea of like, there's so many different ways of drawing connections.
Right.
But I think the act of drawing connections is the thing.
Yeah. And you just kind of have to go out there and do it, because doing anything will produce some sort of result that'll lead you somewhere else. So definitely you just have to take the first step. And then even if you don't know where that's going to lead you, it'll lead you somewhere. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the leap, taking the step.
Thank you. I'm so happy that I got to have this conversation with you.
Well, you made my day.
Awesome.
The Vocal Fries podcast is produced by me, Carrie Gillen, for Halftone Audio. Theme music by Nick Granum. You can find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Vocal Fries Pod. You can email us at vocalfriespod@gmail.com, and our website is vocalfriespod.com.